Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here. I want to bring you an update. We have what could be a pretty significant severe weather risk. Lots of questions about this, but we're going to go through this. In fact, it could be a multi-day threat. We've got severe weather risks really on Friday, Saturday, and on Sunday as well. So we're going to kind of break it all down. So let's talk about Friday. First off, I want to say this. Most of Friday will be pretty much on the dry side. In fact, it will be very late of the evening time before we start to see these storms develop. But that said, we do have an enhanced risk of severe weather here over much of the area here. Really, the severe weather risk encompasses almost all of the lower Ohio Valley here, enhanced risk down over the Boot Hill here of Missouri, down into southern Illinois, some of southern Indiana, and western Kentucky here. If we zoom out, and of course the slight risk over the rest of the area here, if we zoom out on that onto a more of a national view, there's your enhanced risk. You can see it kind of goes all the way down here. And if we look at the probabilities for it, you can see the hatched area doesn't come into us as well. That comes into play for some potential for some large hail with this. And then unfortunately, the severe weather risk continues on into Saturday. As we look at Saturday, you notice the bigger risks are down to our southwest here, but by and large, we do have at least a slight risk here of coming into a corner of us here of southern Indiana and southern Illinois, western Kentucky under the gun here on Saturday as well. And then on Sunday, they have a risk just immediately to our south. But, you know, to be completely honest, I think they're underdrawing this. If I were to add on, I really think you probably need to put it something more like this. I really think it needs to be expanded a little bit more to the east and a little bit more towards the north than what it is. I think we'll have a threat for some severe weather with that again. So let's sort of dive into the data. What's going on? Well, let's take a look at our national maps, and I think that'll help you kind of understand. So tomorrow night, what it's going to be is a warm front, and I'll just say this: you never want to discount a spring warm front, especially whenever a warm front rolls through and you've got the necessary parameters in place. Sometimes it can catch you off guard. Oftentimes you think, well, oh, you know, the severe weather threat usually is stronger with a cold front than it is a warm front, but warm fronts can surprise you. In fact, those typically have the greater tornadic threat with them than what cold fronts do. There's a different dynamic in how they do. Here's how the map sort of looks like right now. Here's the surface observations from 5 p.m. today. Cold front moving off to our east there, and high pressure kind of in control tonight. That'll clear out of the way though, and then as you notice here, this will start to come back as a warm front. So by the time you wake up here tomorrow morning, very isolated chances of anything tomorrow morning. I think it's pretty much going to be a dry day. Then by the afternoon, you notice that warm front has started to work its way to the north of it a little bit, and then by the evening time, that warm front is sort of stalling out over the area. Now, the big question is on Friday evening, where exactly is that warm front going to stall out? The National Weather Service has it stalling out here over Kentucky, or does it stall out more over southern Indiana? There's some questions in the data on where that stalls out. Where it stalls out is going to be the focus, because what's going to happen is storms are going to develop along and to the north of that warm front and right around it, and sort of train over some areas. So there could be some heavy rain with this. But that warm front is going to act as sort of a focus point where, you know, with a cold front coming in, typically you have more of a straight line wind threat because you have typically unidirectional winds as you go up into the atmosphere. Not really a whole lot of change in direction with a cold front typically, but with a warm front you have at least a little bit of a change in direction generally, and so those have a little bit more shear with them, and that of course, that spin, that little bit of extra rotation could lead to some rotating thunderstorms, which of course could produce some tornadoes. Now, would they be long-lived tornadoes? No, I think these would be more of the brief spin-ups, but nonetheless, it's there. And with that rotating thunderstorms, you get a stronger risk for hail. You can get stronger updrafts as well, and of course, that's what it creates the larger hail size. Basically, hail, you know, is basically just frozen water droplets, and you get these strong updrafts. It takes the water droplet way up into the clouds where it's below freezing. It freezes up there, and then it starts to fall down because it's heavy, but it gets caught by another updraft and then goes through the cycle until eventually it gets so heavy the updraft can't support it and it falls to the ground. And so the stronger updrafts you have, because of that, the larger hail size you could have. And by the way, if you ever cut a hailstone open, most of the time you're going to notice concentric circles in there. A circle inside of a circle indicates for you how many times it traveled up and down in those updrafts. The stronger the updrafts in general, though, the larger the hail that you can get with that. So right along that warm front here, rather, That's where we could run the risk for some stronger storms with that could rotate, could produce some brief tornadoes, and could have some hail with it. So I think hail and those will be the bigger threats tomorrow out of this. But again, you can get damaging straight line winds in excess of 60 miles an hour with this. So really all modes of severe weather on the table for this, and some flooding concerns as well. We're going to talk about rain potential here in a little bit, but a lot of rain coming our way with this. Now again, where this sets up shop is going to determine exactly who gets what tomorrow night. And so if I just sort of take a look at the radar here with you, this starts off, this is the high-res NAM. The high-res NAM, I'll just tell you right now, it's kind of struggling seeing this. I'll show you a couple other models that I think are trying to get a little bit better of an idea. I don't think anything has got a locked down yet. But tomorrow morning, there's not much around the area, and there might be some showers early in the morning. That moves out. And then tomorrow afternoon, that's when maybe some storms start to develop. Not really much down here, some up to our north. This is by, excuse me, this is by 8 p.m. tomorrow night, and you notice there's not a lot going on, and then by the time you get a few hours later here into the night, this would be like 11 p.m., you see there's not much going on here either. There's the warm front likely, and it starts to develop some things later as you get into the overnight hours. So that's the high-res NAM. That's struggling. I want you to compare that to some of the other models. This is the WRF ARW model. So here we are tomorrow morning, and then that batch moves out, and then tomorrow evening. So here we are by 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. You're starting to see some things pop, and then watch what happens. Over the course of the evening time, here we are by 11 p.m., and it's just literally explosive growth. I think that's probably more of the idea. What you're going to have is you just see the atmosphere just sort of capped, and then once that cap erodes later on in the evening, right along that warm frontal boundary, that's where you're going to have some explosive storm growth that could provide some heavy rain. This could have some hail with it. And I've got this turned on here. This is also showing our updraft helicity here. This is measuring spin in these potential thunderstorms in the circles. So that's indicating there could be some rotating thunderstorms with this as well. That's something that certainly catches our eye and says, whoa, we need to watch that. Now notice where this is. The warm front then under this kind of a setup here would be positioned, you know, somewhere sort of right around in that, right in our general vicinity. So you could have a focus of thunderstorms right below the Ohio River, or you can have those focus of thunderstorms a little bit north of the Ohio River with a setup like this. But then explosive growth, and then we get some heavy rain in general overnight through that. Now, if we compare that to the NMM model, what I show you here is that the focus is a little bit more towards the north with this. The warm front idea would be more like this, a little bit more towards the north and a little bit more towards the north on the focus there. And so if I sort of put this into motion, there you see some explosive storm growth starting to take place on this as we head late into the evening hours and then coming into the overnight. So the future radar certainly looks a little bit different with this. I don't think any radar has this, future radar has this locked down at this point. It's just three very different ideas at this point. But folks, the reality is here we are under a threat for this tomorrow night. And so we'll just kind of have to see how things play out. But right now, I would expect that the greatest risk for severe weather would come after about 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night. That's when I think you're going to start to see some of that growth start to explode a little bit more in the area. And again, there could be some brief isolated tornadoes with this. And I certainly think strong hail and damaging winds are a possibility with this, but also some flooding rains. This is, you know, with the tropical moisture connection coming in off of this from the south, this is just going to be some heavy downpours. Expect that, you know, if you get some of this just training over you, some 2 and 3 inch totals of rain out of this tomorrow night would not be out of the question in any way, shape, or form. Now again, this is not the only severe weather threat. Again, we've got Saturday that could have a few storms, but Sunday would be the next big day for us. And again, I think this should shift a little bit more towards the north. And let me show you the reason why that, because here's what we've got going on. That warm front continues to come north, and it is lifting through the area here, sort of stalled out on Saturday afternoon. And that is, again, another focus for us to have some potential for some strong storms on Saturday. That one remains very much in question at this point. But watch this low pressure and watch how it moves here. By Sunday morning, you have the low pressure deepening over here into the Missouri area. There's your cold front, and there's your warm front lifted well north of the area. Watch how quickly this moves in, though. By the time this is Sunday morning, by the time you hit Monday morning, that cold front has moved through us. And so what you're going to have, I think, is a squall line develop along this cold front and move through somewhere on Sunday. Now, the question on that is big up in the air. Does it happen more Sunday afternoon? Does it happen more Sunday evening or into the overnight hours? Again, there's some questions depends on timing. We're just going to have to play that out. That's still 3 days away, and so we'll have to adjust that timing as we get a little bit closer. But I do think we could face the threat for a squall line as we head into Sunday evening. So again, that's something to keep in mind. And then by the time this moves through on Tuesday, we'll finally start to dry out, maybe just a little bit as we head into next week before yet more systems start to come through. And now let's take a look at the bigger threat with, what could be the biggest threat out of all this. There's some big questions. There's plenty of wind shear and there's some instability, and we've got this lift along the warm front. So I think there's a good bet that we could see some severe thunderstorms out of this tomorrow night. But the strongest bet is that we're going to be seeing some heavy rain over this. This is accumulated rain totals. One model's idea over the next several days. This takes you through 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning, folks. And you can see here some very heavy rain through the area. And as I just back this out, you can see there's your tropical moisture. And you really feel for some of these folks here over Missouri. There's going to definitely be some Plant 17 delays over Missouri. You're talking, 7 inches here, 5 to 7 inches in this area over here. Not quite as extreme for us, thank goodness, but still over the course of Friday night, really through Monday evening, this is what you're looking at. And this is, predicting 4.3 inches for Evansville, 2.7 in Bloomington, an inch and 7/10 there in Louisville. And so in general, 2 to 3 inches with some isolated 4+ around the area. Not out of the question with this. So some decently heavy rain totals. I'd say a good 2 to 4 inches of rain across the area with some locally higher amounts is certainly possible. So there could be some flooding concerns with this. Thank goodness it's not going to come all at once. We rejoice in that. But nonetheless, there could be some ponding of water on roadways and in fields, low-lying areas as a result of this. The usual areas that are prone to flooding very well could with this, so just keep that in mind as we go through it. So folks, here's again what we know. Warm front comes through tomorrow evening. That could spark off some severe thunderstorms, possibly some isolated tornadoes, but hail and damaging winds there could be a threat, heavy rain as well. Maybe an isolated thunderstorm that goes severe on Saturday, and then another chance of some severe storms with the squall line that will probably race through the area on Sunday afternoon or evening at some point in time. So that's sort of the next 3 days. Keep it tuned here to Southern Indiana Weather on Facebook, on Twitter, the website, and we'll keep you up to date as best we can. Again, I think tomorrow is going to be mostly dry. I'll have updates throughout the afternoon and evening times tomorrow, but the event probably won't get going until 7 or 8 p.m. tomorrow evening, and we'll know a little bit more as we head in towards the afternoon hours. Don't be surprised if we go under some form of a watch tomorrow. If everything plays out the way that it could, we will just have to see. But keep it tuned here, and we'll keep you updated for more information.